was involved in everything at my high school, and I ran half the clubs there. And when I came to MIT, I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm gonna just like go in. I'm gonna beast academics. I'm gonna get through it. I'm gonna like do awesome stuff with math. I'm gonna major in math and physics. And I'm gonna run for. I ran for class council president and UA stuff and like all kinds of student government stuff. I'm like, this is gonna be awesome. I'm gonna run the school. It's gonna be great. So that might not be what actually ended up happening. So I came to MIT, as I said, planning to major in math and physics. And therefore I was taking, the class that I took freshman year was the freshman level introductory mechanics, which is 801. I did, because I was really into math, I was like, I'm going to do the challenging version of multivariable calculus. Because that's a great idea your first semester. Like, why not sign up for a really intense theoretical weird class that, yeah, I didn't know what I was getting into. So I signed up for that. I signed up for a chemistry class and a philosophy class. So at first, I felt really good about it. I came home, my first problem set. I heard a lot about these problem sets. So I came home with one. I'm like, all right, let's get to work on this. Start working. I stayed up all night into the morning. Got it done. I was like, yes, that was great. Like that, the problems on that problem set were way more interesting than the things that I did in high school academically, right? In high school, oftentimes, like if you're doing AP Calc or something, they'll give you a list of integrals and say, okay, integrate all these. Take the derivatives of these functions. The problems on the problem sets are much, much deeper. They have you think about things that you wouldn't think about otherwise. And they have you develop not just your mathematics ability, in this case, but also your ability to solve interesting problems. So I got it back, and I got 100 on it. And I was like, yes. I was like, this is great. This is what I expected. I'm gonna do this. I got this. So it went like that for a while. The first few P sets, I got 100 on, and I was getting 90s and stuff. I'm like, I got this. And then I walked into my first exam, which they limit you, obviously, on time, so you can't stay up all night doing this. So I did my first exam, and I actually have it here. So I said, okay, so this is multivariate calculus with theory. I sat down, I'm like, okay, I got all the P sets fine, I can do this. So I did the first problem. Consider the 3 points, P1, P2, and P3. How many points Q are there for which P1, P2, P3, and Q are the corners of a parallelogram? Find the coordinates of these points. And I was like, oh, I think I'll look at problem 2. Okay, problem 2. Consider the 3 lines with the following parameterizations. And then they give you weird equations. Show that 2 of these lines have to line the same plane same plane pi, while the third is orthogonal to the plane pi. And I was like, wow, this is an interesting exam. I'm going to look at what 3 is like. 3. Let D be the solid region that that lies outside the sphere of radius A, such that the origin inside the cylinder of radius A about the x-axis, and between the planes x equals a over 2 and x equals negative a over 2. Sketch the region D1 and its intersection with the xz plane. There's one more problem on here. Maybe I can do that one. Consider the function, this is a crazy function. Calculate from the definition the partial derivatives, blah, blah, blah. I was like, calculate. That reminds me of high school. I can do that. I can calculate things, yes. So, I didn't know what was happening. I sat there, and I was like, I can't do a single problem on this exam. How is this happening to me? What? So I sat there for an hour and a half. I struggled through, I just tried to write things down that were related to what I was doing. I don't know. Got the exam back. My first exam score at MIT. Does anyone want to guess what it was? 15. Any other guesses? Pass. Okay. So I want to point out that, like many of you, I never got anything lower than an A in high school. And my first exam grade was a 22. And I was like, wow, I'm pretty sure by most metrics that is failing. I never really thought of myself as a failure before. Okay, well, that's okay. This is just a math class. Just, maybe my other classes will go better. Yeah. So 801, mechanics. I go into that one, and we had some quizzes in that class, little light quizzes, and I got 90s on kinematics, which is just like, if you throw a ball, how far does it go? So I could do that. I was like, yep, that's right up my alley. And then we had our first actual 801 exam. And I'll just tell you my grade. My grade was a 36 on that one. So I failed my first physics exam also. Despite doing all right up to that point in the class. And then my chemistry exam was just a bit of a error on my part. So I was excited. I was like, okay, I can do this one. Like the chemistry one, like I looked at and stuff, and I looked at the practice exams, the problems aren't that bad. So I went through the exam, had 4 problems. I went through, I finished, and I was like, yes, this is great. Like I finished, I have extra time left. I'm going to go back and check my answers, check, good. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to hand this in. And I'm like, well, let's check one more time. So I checked through, I got to the 3rd problem, and then I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just hand it in. So I turned the page to close the exam, and there lay problem 4. And I was like, oh, well, there goes that exam. So, my first semester was not starting off to a great start. When that happened, I was like, okay, I need to change what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I need to do better time management. I need to spend more time on problem sets or something. I need to do something different. And the thing that I ended up doing differently was like, oh, I know, I'll just give up sleeping. That's not important. People don't need to sleep. Come on. So, my weekend schedule was I would get back from classes Friday and then hang out with people on Friday night. And then I'd work on my math problem set. I'd work on it to maybe 4 in the morning and go to bed, sleep through Saturday. Wake up Saturday evening. Usually hang out with people and maybe not work Saturday night, it depended. I'd go back to sleep. And then Sunday I was like, oh no, I have to finish this. It's due Monday. Like, okay, so I work all Sunday, work through the night, Sunday night, and then I'd be like, what's that? I'm like, oh, light, what? Shady, oh, the sun, that's the sun. Okay, and it's coming up, not going down. That's problematic. All right, well, guys got to come finish this, so I finished it up. I'm like, okay, now I'm going to go and turn it in since it's due in 20 minutes, and then I'll go to sleep and skip through my Monday classes. Not go to them, I'll just sleep because I haven't. So, as you might be able to guess, the semester did not conclude in a glorious fashion. I squeezed by with C's in chemistry and my math class. I failed freshman physics. And I got a B in philosophy because, let's be honest, like, philosophy, you can kind of just say stuff, and it works. They're like, yeah, no, we don't exist. No, we do exist, who cares? So I got a B in philosophy. That was my crowning moment. And for those of you who don't know, your first semester at MIT is pass no record, which means that you just get so my C's were just P's, and my F was a no record, and it just vanished from my transcript. So it's not. So I never failed physics. I'm making it up. So I was like, okay. So I went home, and I will never forget going home and waiting for my grades to be posted. And the feeling of, oh my gosh, what am I going to do when I get like 3 Fs? How do I recover from that? So I'm like refreshing the page. Every morning I wake up, like, first thing I do, log on, refresh the page. All right, refresh the page. And I was relieved to have C's. That's not supposed to happen. You're not supposed to be relieved to have a C. So I did that, and I was like, all right. So we had IAP, which you don't have. You can sign up for classes. You don't have to. I took IAP off, so relaxing. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go back, and I know, like, I relatively kind of figured out what happened. Early on, I fell too far behind in physics. I had no background in high school in physics, and that was a mistake. I should have taken an easier physics class. I also should have taken an easier math class, but, you know. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go back. I'm going to stay on top of my stuff. I'm going to get my pieces done. I'm going to try to sleep at slightly more regular hours. So I did that, and my fall term went all right. I did relatively well. Spring term, I did all right. So I was like, okay, this is good. So, and actually what happened was I was repeating the physics class I taken. And the physics class I taken, I found out during the class. So I come in and remember thinking that I wanted to major in math and physics. And I said, after I failed physics, it's like, yeah, maybe that's not such a good idea. But then I was repeating it in the spring, and I was like, oh, like, this is making sense, and it's really interesting. This is really cool. Like, how physics is so powerful, and it's beautiful. So I thought, okay, maybe I should reconsider this. Maybe I'll think about a minor or something like that. So I ended up getting an A in physics. I went from an F to an A, and I'm very proud of that. So I was like, okay, I'm on the right track here. I'm on the right track. So the fall of my sophomore year, I was like, this is when I start taking classes largely in my major. So I signed up for, and because of other things that had happened, I was also starting to consider a minor in political science also. So I thought, okay, I signed up for a political science class, and I signed up for 2 math classes, legitimate math classes. So I signed up for a theory. You'd think I'd learn from my mistakes. So remember in the fall, I signed up for a theoretical flavored multivariate calculus instead of regular multivariate calculus. So that went horribly, and then in the fall of my sophomore year, I was like, oh, I think I'll sign up for theoretical flavored linear algebra because theoretical multivariate calculus wasn't bad enough. So I signed up for that, and I signed up for analysis, which is basically you derive all of math, you derive all of calculus from first principles. So from like set theory, and you prove everything. You go through. So this was interesting because I spent hours and hours and hours on these P sets, and I was finishing them, and I was like, yeah, like, okay, I proved it. I'm set, I got this. And I turn it in, and I get the piece back, and it was a really bad grade. And I'm like, why does this keep happening? Like, I proved the things, it wasn't clicking for me. And I was also starting to realize that math, as they portray it to you in high school, is not math. That's not actually what mathematicians do. They don't say, oh, let me look at my inbox today. Oh, okay. Oh, they want me to do some derivatives. Okay. That's lunch. All right, let's go. No, it's much, much more group. I can't think of the word. It's harder than that. So it soon became apparent to me that even if I was able to major in math, it was not something I wanted to do anymore. So I said, okay, now what do I do? I'm not going to be a math major. What am I going to switch into? So I was like, okay, well, political science. And I was very involved in politics stuff over the summer, so I was like, that might be my move. So I'll do that. So I switched to political science. I dropped my 2 math classes, switched into my political science class. And that went relatively well. I did have to devote like a week to just reading because this was like the 4th week of the semester that I was switching in, so I missed a whole bunch of reading, so I had to catch up. But I went through that semester with 3 poli-sci classes and something else, I don't remember. But it went well. And then I was like, okay, this is good. And I also did physics 2 with electricity magnetism, and I enjoyed that, and that was good, and it went relatively well. So I was again thinking, okay, I'll major in political science and I'll minor in physics. This is turning out to be a good plan. So then in the spring, I took physics 3, which is waves and vibrations, and that was tough. That class was closer to 801, the first physics class I took, than it was the second time I took it. So that was tough, and I was like, okay, well I got through it, like that's all that matters, like I'll be able to wrap up my physics minor. And then in the fall of my junior year, I was taking some of the final classes you need for the political science major. And I'm interested in political science because I like policy, and I like the politics side of it and that type of thing. I don't care at all about how to make a study and like how to do polls and like things like that. Like that's what pollsters are for. Like I don't want to do that. So I found out that I hated political science at a high level. So I was like, okay, I can't do math. It's too late now. I hate political science. I don't want to spend the last year and a half at MIT doing political science because I hate it. So what does that leave? Well, I'm minoring in physics. And I love physics. And I honestly think it's incredibly beautiful. But it's hard. So I said, okay. I talked to a lot of my friends. I tried to get their advice. And what it came down to eventually was the only reason for me not to do physics I was afraid to fail at physics. I decided that fear of failure is not a sufficient justification for not pursuing what you want to do. So I said, okay, I will switch majors for the second time, and I will become a physicist. And it might help some background. From the very beginning, I'd always wanted to teach high school math and physics. So all this time when I'm switching these majors and stuff, that had always been my end goal. And regardless of what major, you can still kind of do that. But I was like, I love physics, I want to do physics. So I switched to physics, which meant in the spring, I took quantum physics and statistical physics. Could not have been more of like a black and white type of thing, because so these were the last two intense classes I needed for the physics major, because I already satisfied so many requirements for the minor. One of my professors, the professor that I had for quantum physics, his name is Alan Adams. I encourage you to look him up. He was incredible man. He said the first day of class, he said, my job is to make it so that when you go home, the only thing that you want to do is the problem set. I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And he blew my mind, because I left class almost every week being like, oh my gosh, what? How does that work? Wait, you turn away and they're not there? What? Quantum, this is so... I have to do the problem set so I understand this. And I go and I do the problem, and I'm like, this is fascinating, this is awesome. I'm so glad I switched to physics. And then statistical physics, and also, again, professor was fantastic. Very animated, very excited. My professor from my other class. Okay, so I'm going to take this here. Oh, we can't hear you. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll put the. I don't like the mic, so I'll talk louder. Okay, so we're gonna go here. No good. So I didn't do so well in that class. I didn't like it very much. Looking back on it, I appreciated it a little bit more, the content, and I plan on eventually going back and doing it again, looking at it again. But quantum is great. I got through it. I got through the physics, and I was like, I'm set. I'm going to graduate with a physics major. And then I was like, wait, I have to do a lab? Why? Okay. So I'd been not wanting to do a lab because I don't like lab. Maybe that's not a very MIT thing to say. I'm much more of a I like pencil and paper. I like doing problems, I like thinking about stuff. I'm not huge on why is this voltmeter reading the wrong measurement? Why is this isn't working? Troubleshoot this, do that. I don't want to do that. So the physics lab is called J-Lab, Junior Lab, and it has a reputation. Anytime so you've heard that we refer to classes as numbers. Anytime we don't refer to a class as a number, J-Lab, Unified, for example, those two classes, that means they're really, really hard. They have a reputation for being very difficult. So I was like, okay, J-Lab, I don't want to do J-Lab because it's really difficult, and I don't like lab. I want to find an easier lab. So I was like, ooh, chemistry lab for non-chemistry majors. This is right up my alley. I'm not a chem major. I can do this. So I signed up for a co-rec was organic chemistry in the fall, so I'm like, I got this. So I signed up, and then I dropped it. This is awful. And I was like, well, I did about a third of the class. That should be enough to get me through chem lab. So I signed up for the lab, and first day of lab, I go in, and they have a checklist of all the equipment that you're supposed to have in your little drawer, of all the pipettes and all that stuff. So I open it up, an Erlenmeyer flask. What is that? Oh, that's that thing from Breaking Bad. Wait, no, that's not. So I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, glassware, okay, let's do this. And then we went to lecture, and he went through the lab we were going to be doing, and I didn't understand a word he said. So I said, oh, this is why I dropped organic chemistry, because I hate chemistry. Why am I in a chemistry lab? But really, it was for non-chem majors. So I was like, okay, there has to be something else. So I found that there was another lab, which was physics-y, but was not J-Lab. It was in nuclear engineering. So I signed up for that, and that's what I'm in right now. And I'm going to finish it. graduate. Yeah. So the main takeaway that you guys should have from this is this may have sounded like a sad story, but I hope that you take away that it wasn't. Because sometimes, in order to make something better, you first have to break it apart and crush it down and destroy it. And then put it back together. And I feel like that's what MIT did with me. And I would recommend highly, despite everything I just said, I recommend highly that all of you strongly consider coming here. Because I could have gone to another school that would not have challenged me like this. And I would have gotten A's through it. And I would have believed that, I can go into the world and I can do anything, and blah, blah, blah. And like, this is great, like, I'm all set. But I would not have grown nearly as much as I have here. The way that I think today is completely distinct from the way that I thought 4 years ago. The way that I reason. It's spread into almost all aspects of my life. I mentioned I was interested in politics and political science stuff. I'm an opinion editor, opinion columnist. I was editor for the MIT's newspaper, and I write articles and stuff. And my arguments, just the way that I deliver them and the way that I think about things, I'm just so much better than it was 4 years ago. And I really hope that you guys will, like I said, strongly consider coming here. And if you fail, don't give up. Because what my story might have been rather dramatic, but everybody here goes through some version of what happened to me. It might not be as severe, it might be more severe, but everyone fails. Without failure, you can't ever really know what you're capable of. So you don't have any things to overcome and say, I failed physics. I know I could do physics. I love physics. Physics is awesome. I am going to do physics. And it happened. So the moral of the story is don't let fear of failure prevent you from doing things, and try really hard and come to MIT, and yeah.